Hello everybody! In this video, I'll be discussing what we consider to be the top 5 resorts for late season skiing in Colorado and what you can expect at each of them if you go during the late season. Late season skiing in Colorado extends from the middle of March all the way through when the last resort closes in June or July. If you don't understand the concept, just keep watching because it's pretty self-explanatory. This is the second of a 2-part miniseries, the first of which was an early season skier's guide to Colorado. So with that, let's begin, a late season skier's guide to Colorado ski resorts. We'll start off with a disclaimer. Late season skiing is highly variable, and one of the most important things to know is that some ski resorts will keep trails open that don't have full cover, so you'll need to be advanced enough to be able to pick a line and ski down while avoiding the sections without snow. If you rely on trusting what comes over the next tail to be fully covered and having no surprises, I would highly recommend just waiting until the next ski season. Given that ski seasons are getting shorter as each year passes, we will only look at the trends from the past 24 years so as not to dilute the impression of how late a ski area can stay open with some data from record snow years in the 1980s. Alright, now let's start it off with Loveland. Loveland is one of the highest elevation ski areas on the continent, sitting directly above the Eisenhower Tunnel. Loveland typically closes on the first or second weekend of May, always on a Sunday. What's unique about Loveland is that it typically has nearly all of its terrain open on closing day. It's a much more authentic ski day than you'll get at other resorts, and there have definitely been closing days in the past when it was a powder day. As one would expect, your best bet for Loveland in the late season is going to be sticking to the groomers. I would especially recommend avoiding all of the terrain around Chair 4, as that area is windswept tundra and doesn't keep the best snow even in peak season. I would just avoid skiing the Chair 4 stuff as soon as April rolls around. Chairs 9 and 8 can definitely be hit or miss. Of course, if there's just been a big storm, Chair 8 can't be beat. You can head down the Hook'em Horns area, which is relatively reminiscent of the back bowls at Vail. Chair 6 offers both some good grooming and a decent little park, so it and Jetstream are my picks. The Valley typically closes several weeks before the Basin, typically in mid-April. With most closing days, you'll see big crowds and long lines, but because of Loveland's parking capacity issue, it really does just ski like a normal day, which I really like. It has a long season, but the very end doesn't feel much different than the middle of February. Loveland closed on May 6th in 2018, May 8th in 2019, May 10th in 2021, May 8th in 2022, May 7th in 2023, and are planning to close on May 12th in 2024. Next up is Copper Mountain, which typically closes in mid to late April. Copper doesn't stay open as long as any of the other 4 resorts on this list, but there is a reason it's still on here. Copper is kind of an oddball. The biggest draw about Copper in the late season is that it has one of the only functioning parks at that time of the year. And beyond just having the only functional park, it has multiple parks up and running with their biggest jumps and features all typically still in play even through closing day. If you want to ski parks in April, I can't think of a better place in all of North America. Outside of the parks, Copper typically finishes out the season with most of its groomers open, including some off of Super Bee, American Eagle, American Flyer, Timberline, and Woodward lifts. The resort typically starts by closing the Three Bears and Backside areas, followed by Spalding Bowl, Union Meadows, Resolution, Rendezvous Sierra, and Storm King, and then finishes with Lumberjack, Alpine, and sometimes Kokomo. The thing about Copper is that their early season snowmaking is so good that there's typically a solid, albeit icy, snowpack on major runs like Main Vein. Venture off of those, however, perhaps for the sake of argument onto Foul Play, and it's not going to be nearly as good. It is interesting to me that they don't try and keep all the upper mountain terrain open, as naturally the upper mountain retains the best snow. I suppose it makes sense, however, if they're focusing so much on just keeping up with the parks with such rapid melt-off. Copper Mountain closing day doesn't seem to get as much fanfare as other Colorado closing days, which is probably a good thing. As such, if you want to go to a closing day, but don't want to deal with the crowds, Copper is also a good option for that. Copper closed on April 15th in 2018, April 21st in 2019, April 25th in 2021, April 24th in 2022, May 7th in 2023, and are planning to close on April 28th in 2024. Next up is Breckenridge. As far as Colorado goes, Vail Resorts typically puts all of its late season resources into Breckenridge. This means consolidating snow, which isn't something they used to do, but they've been closing off trails and taking the snow from those trails and putting it on other trails in hopes of staying open even longer each and every year that passes. This often leads to extremely thin ribbons of death, if you know what I mean, for closing day. Breck has been closing in mid-May the past couple seasons, but honestly they've been anywhere from late April to late May. If you thought Breckenridge was busy on a normal Saturday, then you ought to check it out on closing day. Oh boy, how Breck does indeed live up to its notoriety on closing day. The lift lines are long, but the vibes are indeed high. Typically, at least some of the Peak 8 Alpine is still open, so I would highly recommend heading there because it will definitely have the best snow. Typically, there is a pond skim of sorts at the Peak 8 base. Breckenridge typically closes peaks 6 and 10, leaving only 7, 8, and 9 for the end of April. 9 and sometimes 7 then close, typically leaving just 8. You'll have just 1 or 2 runs to ski onto the lower mountain, but in most years there will be some open terrain on Imperial Ridge or in the Horseshoe Bowl or both. Like I said, the crowds do get crazy. Closing day at every resort is a busy day, but something about Breckenridge just makes it seem busier. Maybe it's my inherent bias, but that's just how it seems to me. Regardless, because Breck stays open so long and keeps some high alpine stuff going, it's definitely worth a look in the late season. Breckenridge closed on April 22nd in 2018, May 27th in 2019, May 23rd in 2021, May 15th in 2022, May 21st in 2023, and are planning to close in late May in 2024. Next up is Winter Park. Winter Park isn't a resort that is heralded for its long season, but contrary to most other ski resorts, Winter Park seasons have been the same length and some even longer than average in recent years. Winter Park typically closes anywhere from late April to mid-May, but last season they stayed open even later than that. Do bear in mind that last year was an anomaly, but Winter Park seems to have found the secret to staying open longer as they have had closings a week or two later than average in several of the past couple seasons. Winter Park closing day is crazy. They stay open way longer than they should in my opinion, and they don't consolidate the snow, leaving massive gaps of dirt and or grass in the middle of runs. Definitely bring your rock skis, as you honestly should with any resort, and be very cognizant of your surroundings. The first areas to close at Winter Park as the season progresses is Vasquez Ridge and Eagle Wind. The outer terrain continues to close until it is just the core Winter Park territory and the main Mary Jane and Parson Bowl areas. Winter Park territory and a lot of the Jane Blacks close, leaving, for the final week or so, only Mary Jane Trail, which will often have the aforementioned empty fields in the middle of the run, some of the Sunnyside runs, and the Parson Bowl. Of course, sheerly due to its elevation, the best late season skiing at Winter Park will be found off of Pano. It'll be slushy, but at least in general, the snow cover will be pretty solid up in the Parson Bowl. Mary Jane has a great vibe in the course season, so as you can imagine, the feeling in the air in the late season up to closing day is just absolutely incredible. Everyone's just out there having fun. So if nothing else does it, despite the shoddy snow conditions, go there just to have some fun with everyone else. Winter Park closed on May 6th in 2018, May 12th in 2019, May 16th in 2021, May 21st in 2022, and on May 29th in 2023. And finally, let's discuss the ski area that needs no introduction, Arapahoe Basin. A basin, while not always the first to open, has historically always been the last to close due to its extreme elevation. A basin sits mostly between 10,500 feet and 13,000 feet, which has allowed them to stay open until the end of May, the beginning of June, and even, on the rare occasion, until the 4th of July in the past 2 decades. They typically close on a Sunday, but sometimes have closed on other days. A basin is absolutely fantastic in the month of April, with standard winter-like powder days often mixed in with traditional bluebird warm, slushy spring days. The basin operates with all of its terrain through April. In early to mid-May, the resort closes the east wall, steep gullies, Polovicini, Molly Hogan, and Beavers areas, leaving just the Zoomable, Lenawee, and Black Mountain areas open. Just a week or two later is when the Zoomable typically closes. Lower mountain terrain closes until there's just the High Noon Blue, often with snow consolidated to only half the width of the tree-defined area. It skis very differently when it is only half as wide, slushy, and has a million people on it, so just be prepared for that. On the upper mountain, the closing day run is typically Lenawee face to Durkam's Gulch, with a pond skim located by the Stelhang Hut. The closing day lifts are Lenawee and Black Mountain, but do beware that Arapahoe Basin's closing day is incredibly popular. Parking lots typically fill up before lifts even open, and lift lines commonly top an hour. The skiing is not good, period. But if you want to do it for the experience, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. When a basin pushes its season even longer, they typically operate weekends only. A basin closed on June 3rd in 2018, July 4th with an asterisk in 2019, June 6th in 2021, June 5th in 2022, June 4th in 2023, and are planning to close in early June in 2024. The reason for the asterisk in 2019 is that year, A Basin maintained a hike-to terrain park for the 6th and 7th of July, but they haven't done it since and haven't given any indication that they will bring it back. Well, that about wraps it up for the late season guide to Colorado skiing. As always, please leave any questions down below, and when next season comes around, don't forget to check out our early season guide to Colorado. Thank you all for watching. All my love, I'm out.